Greetings, Star Warriors, and welcome to the Outer Rim. Today we're going to be playing a little game of irreconcilable differences. I'm just going to say there's 3 people in one article we're going to be looking at. 3 different opinions. The first part, it explains what the game is. Irreconcilable differences is a format where we talk about movies that we just can't decide on. Is it good? Is it bad? What are its merits as a work of cinema? Irreconcilable Differences is meant to be read with some knowledge of the film in question and a strong set of opinions. Well, these people do seem to have a strong set of opinions, which means they've all figured out what they think of it. So let's jump right into it. The first person. Star Wars The Last Jedi has all the makings of a mediocre sci-fi flop, a la Valerian in the City of a Thousand Planets, or any of the 2010's bland Star Trek reboots. Just like those films, The Last Jedi looks amazing, and from a mega-budgeted Disney production, I'd expect no less. However, the film is plagued with flaws on almost all other fronts. The most egregious offense comes in the pilot. The first half of the film is dreadfully paced, telling 2 separate stories at the same time, both feeling as if they're barely crawling along. Rose and Finn's entire 45-minute storyline is entirely discardable, and the film's off-kilter attempt at commentary on class inequality feels like some kind of sick joke coming from Disney, a multi-billion-dollar mega-corporation. Now, so far, I agree with all of this guy's statements. Cheesy writing and cheesier performances plague the film, leading some would-be emotional moments to be completely laughable. Many of these flaws were just as present in countless critically panned sci-fi flops, and they were called out for it. So why are we willing to forgive The Last Jedi? Now, I do have some contention with him implying that we've forgiven The Last Jedi, but maybe he's talking about a certain group of people. Certainly, he's not talking about us. Here's his answer. The answer, in short, is nostalgia. And I think it may be the death of quality cinema. While that may be a bit hyperbolic, new installments of the Star Wars films have been granted a sort of cultural amnesty, being graded on a curve by both moviegoers and critics alike. Many have lauded The Last Jedi as being subversive of its Star Wars identity, but this is simply untrue. While small details change and definitions about the Force may shift, we still saw many scenes from the original films recreated almost identically. When I saw the film, the audience was laughing out loud during the scenes clearly intended to be serious, but then cheered and applauded when their favorite characters from the original films made their on-screen appearances. Nostalgia breeds instant forgiveness, and it's for that reason that The Last Jedi could never have truly been subversive. Had it been, audiences would have never forgiven its multitude of shortcomings. Now, this is where I sort of have a contention with this guy. Nostalgia is not the reason why people who have forgiven this film do forgive the film. I mean, there are plenty of people who believe that the film has nothing to forgive. There are plenty of SJWs that believe that their political agendas are far more important to the movie than anything having to do with plot or acting or anything of the sort. But then there's also other groups of people. There's a group of people that just want to see explosions and flashy lights for 2 hours so that they can, go to bed and wake up the next morning and go to work the next day and feel a little bit refreshed for having seen an explosive film that kept them on the edge of their seats. I guess I can explain it this way. The reason the average moviegoer cheers when Harrison Ford comes on screen is the same reason the average moviegoer who couldn't tell a Transformer from a GoBot cheers when Optimus Prime comes on screen. It's because the music playing, the certain design of the red and blue truck that comes on screen is obviously someone that the movie is telling you to cheer. Doesn't necessarily have anything to do with nostalgia in most cases. Transformers was a pretty popular cartoon when it was on TV in the 80s, but far more people saw Michael Bay's films than saw that animated cartoon. Michael Bay's movies were bad, but that didn't stop people who had no sense of nostalgia for that franchise from cheering in the theater. But let's continue with the last paragraph from this guy. He's going to say some interesting things in this one. At the end of the day, Star Wars The Last Jedi is a mediocre film that entertains through its runtime, but is by no means the brilliant film it has been held as. Moments of genius filter through from time to time. When the Rebel ship jumped through the First Order ship, awesome, and totally refreshing for a Star Wars film. But they sadly serve only as a reminder that the Star Wars franchise has the resources and creative energy to be so much more than just a dumb sci-fi space opera. Maybe the series should take some advice from Kylo Ren. Let the past die, kill it. Now at the end, this guy comes out as totally an anti-Star Wars guy. He literally felt that the movie wasn't ridiculous enough and that it could benefit from being even more ridiculous than it actually was. Beware the wolf in sheep's clothing, people. Now that leads us to the next person who has a completely different perspective, while at the same time coming to the same conclusion that The Last Jedi was a bad movie. The Last Jedi is a bad Star Wars movie, and that makes it a bad movie. It doesn't just feel tonally and structurally disconnected from the original trilogy or the prequel trilogy, it also feels completely disconnected from The Force Awakens as well. Every bit of potential and excitement built up in the previous film is burned to the ground here, sometimes literally. Mysterious characters that have barely been used are thrown out like yesterday's garbage. The hopes and dreams of fans have been utterly crushed, not to build something better than what fans had come up with, but to dumb down Star Wars into a superhero franchise, one in which the baton of Jedi can be passed down endlessly for decades, so long as the money keeps flowing. Thematically, the film fails at every conceivable level. It purports to be about letting the past die and moving on, but the film spends its last 40 minutes rehashing the opening battle scene from The Empire Strikes Back and remaking the throne room clash from Return of the Jedi. Old friends pop up every few scenes to make sure you don't forget this is still a Star Wars film. All of them are wasted. The fascinating ideas brought up in the first third of the film, of the Jedi, Sith being perhaps more similar than we believed, of the balance between light and dark not being about forming a dichotomy, but about finding balance within oneself, of the notion that maybe it doesn't matter if the First Order or the Resistance wins the war. All of these ideas are wasted by a conclusion that falls right back on Empire equals bad, Rebellion equals good, Rey equals good, Kylo equals bad. The Last Jedi is one of the most surprising blockbusters in years. Surprising because truly no one could have predicted some of the things that happened in the movie. Surprising because almost no one could have predicted just how bad the movie would be. Subversion only works if it's used sparingly, that is, to subvert. If every scene is a subversion of the previous film and the previous scene, the subversion itself becomes the opposite of subversion, and the film falls completely flat as a piece of storytelling as a result. Poor humor and mishandled character arcs abound. An incredible cast, beautiful production are totally underserved by a half-baked script that comes off as a giant middle finger to every person that ever dreamed of that galaxy far, far away. When George Lucas gave up Star Wars, did Star Wars also lose its soul as a result? Will Episode 9 be any better? In the words of Master Yoda, the dark side clouds everything. Impossible to see the future is. Now that was a much more insightful review, but it's coming from someone who is a fan of Star Wars, not from someone who's a fan of who knows what. Big explosions, alien boobs, and tone-deaf gags that would have been left on the cutting room floor of any respectable film. And we don't need to talk about the last guy in this article, because all he does is sing the praises of Rian Johnson and how he made the best movie in the Star Wars saga since The Empire Strikes Back. So we know he has no credibility, and there's no sense going over what he has to say at all. But I will be leaving a link in the description box below for anyone who would like to read the article themselves. I'm almost certain the rest of you will get as riled up as I did when I was reading the last part of that article. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you'll be made aware when new videos are uploaded. Share this video across the galaxy. And as always, if you're listening, you are the new rebellion. 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 You are the new rebellion.